Indonesia is also a richly multilingual country. And I understand you have more languages than we do have in the Philippines, but the your context or in your country, how many languages do you have? Now, let me talk about that a little bit more later. The study, the project focuses on the notion of language justice. I mean, we hear language on one hand and justice on the other hand, but almost always separately. Today, we put together the two and conceptualize language justice as an important phenomenon during the time of COVID-19. And what is language justice? As the combined term suggests, it is an evolving framework based on the notion of respecting every individual's fundamental language rights. And I cannot think of any other, at least during our lifetime, right? During our lifetime, when our language rights are even more important and even more have to be explicitly talked about and mentioned and protected. Language justice hinges on the individual's ability to communicate, understand, and be understood in the language an individual prefers and feels most powerful. I mean, we talk to each other in English right now, but I don't agree that English is the language where you feel most powerful. I feel most powerful when I speak my mother tongue. And my mother tongue is neither English nor Tagalog, Tagalog being the national language of the Philippines. I feel most powerful when I speak my mother tongue, which is the language we spoke when I was growing up in my province in Luzon. That's the language that I feel most powerful. And that's the language that I prefer. But because of the hegemonic presence of dominant languages, because of dominance of languages, we now have to contend with COVID-19 as a language emergency using languages that most people have access to. The dominance of languages now presents a problem. Well, a lot of problems actually, because this notion of language dominance greatly affects our understanding and attainment of public rights. And what are public rights? This include access to legal services, emergency protective orders, law enforcement, and typically healthcare services. Now let's zoom in on language justice in the time of COVID-19. And when I was putting together the slides, I saw this material in the internet, and it struck me because it asks a question that for me captures the essence of language justice. Do you speak COVID-19? Do you speak COVID-19? COVID-19 is not a language, but do you speak it? And more importantly, do you understand COVID-19? In the time of COVID-19, language justice is more important than ever because those who primarily use non-dominant languages have historically faced challenges in seeking access to basic amenities and supportive services. I mean, even before the pandemic, I mean, during the pre-pandemic context, there already are a lot of issues regarding the sidelining of people who speak non-dominant languages. And we need to understand that, the fact that you are able to attend an international conference like this, and that you can interact with the speakers and with your audience if you are a presenter, makes you or puts you in a privileged position. You are privileged. I am privileged. The organizers are privileged because we speak a language that when we do, we are able to get our message across. But how about people who speak only non-dominant languages? Linguistically marginalized communities are often the most isolated and vulnerable. I know you will agree with me when I say that, because services and benefits become very difficult to access and obtain when they are presented using languages that they do not understand or that they do not speak. Therefore, in the time of COVID-19, health, safety, and fundamental rights of millions of individuals all around the world, individuals who do not speak English, who do not have English as their dominant language, are at risk, and their rights could be violated because of the lack of access to linguistic justice. Now, let me give you also a little bit of a background on the multilingual context of the Philippines so you understand where the study comes from. Definitely, Philippines is a multilingual society. Ethnologue puts our number of languages as of 2021 at 186. Out of this 186 languages, 184 are living and 2 are extinct. 184 is quite a lot of languages. I mean, out of the 184 languages in the Philippines, how many do I speak? I speak English. It's officially one of our languages. Tagalog, our national language. Filipino or Tagalog, our national language. I speak Kapampangan, the mother tongue that I spoke about a while back, and a little bit of Pangasinan, which is also spoken by Dr. Medriano. He knows that. Out of the 184, I speak only 4. I speak only 4. And of the living languages, out of 184, 175 are indigenous. That means you find them only in the Philippines. They are spoken only in the Philippines. 9 are non-indigenous. That includes English, our variety of Spanish Creole, our variety of Chinese as well, non-indigenous languages. Furthermore, 36 are institutional, and these 36 languages are the main languages included in our recent mother tongue-based multilingual education policy. 36 out of 175, even out of 175 indigenous languages, even if we say that materials on COVID-19 are supposed to be produced using the 36 institutional mother tongues because they are taught in school, a lot more than half remain underrepresented. 67 are developing, 36 are vigorous, 34 are in trouble, and 11 are dying. And in the backdrop of this multilingual context in the Philippines, only English and Tagalog could be claimed as the dominant languages, our everyday language. So what's the issue now? The issue is very simple when we sat down conceptualizing this paper. Every individual's language rights are just as important and often even equate to healthcare rights. Sometimes healthcare rights are prevented, healthcare rights are not achieved simply because individuals do not understand a specific language. During the COVID-19 pandemic, our vulnerabilities as individuals and our institutions, the institutions that serve us, have been exposed. Therefore, during this crisis, essential and life-saving information and updates are very necessary, and they have to be made available in languages where individuals feel most powerful. Languages that are accessible, languages that are understandable. But when we conceptualized the study, we did not know that. I mean, we suspected, we assumed, we hypothesized linguistic justice exists, as many other researchers and scholars in the field talk about it in relation to COVID-19, but we did not have firsthand evidence yet of the existence of such linguistic injustice. Therefore, when we thought of the research objective and aim, we thought that using the lens of language justice, we shall aim to describe language choice. And language choice is just one of the many different manifestations of language justice or the lack thereof. But for us, at the exploratory level, it's easiest to investigate language justice using the evidence of language choice in official COVID-19 information materials from regional and national social media accounts at the Department of Health. The Department of Health is the Philippines' primary agency responsible for COVID-19 response and mitigation. By extension, therefore, the study aims to shed light into the potential injustice that those who speak minor languages in multilingual Philippines potentially experience, resulting from the deliberate choice of a language or of languages to disseminate COVID-19 information. Our our research design for this paper is simple. It's a descriptive cross-sectional study based on Burke Johnson's classification of non-experimental quantitative research designs. It's descriptive in terms of objective because the aim is to just describe the characteristics of the phenomenon. And in this case, the phenomenon in question is language justice in the time of COVID-19. And it's also cross-sectional. That's the time element, because at the time we collected data, it was the present time, and there was a cross-sectional analysis as well. We analyzed our data according to or based on the three island groups of the Philippines. Filipino members of the audience who are Filipinos know that that's Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And the setting and context, it's in the Philippines. It's composed of a total of 17 regions with all the 184 living languages dispersed all around the archipelago. And within every specific region, there is a dominant language. Although both English and Tagalog compete with typically another mother tongue in these regions. And in terms of the COVID-19 context, I also just want to say this, as of yesterday and as we speak, okay, the Philippines has 989,380 COVID cases. One of the biggest numbers in the world, I think second to Indonesia in terms of the total number in Southeast Asia, and also second in terms of the total number of active cases. So needless to say, there's a lot of problem that we face when it comes to response and mitigation. And while the concerned agencies are already doing their share in order to respond to the pandemic from a medical perspective, from an economic perspective, from environmental perspective, we are here trying to propose also another way of trying to enrich our response to the pandemic, which is a language perspective. The data consists of COVID-19 information materials that were published by central and regional offices of the Philippines Department of Health. When we enforced our selection criteria to build the corpus of the study, we were able to collect 238 materials, all from the regional and central offices of the Department of Health. You are going to ask, and maybe you are thinking, why not include those that are not published by the Department of Health or by central agencies? Well, that is up for another study. You might want to replicate this study using that kind of data. But if we want to look at language justice using these materials, we thought that we have to first describe the existence of language dominance in the choice of language in materials that are published by the concerned agencies, because they are primarily the agencies that are responsible to disseminate information regarding COVID-19. So their choice matters, and these materials are often the most widely cascaded and disseminated materials regarding COVID-19 in the Philippines. And here are our selection criteria for the materials. Number one, all materials that were included in the analysis should be COVID-19 information materials consisting of either preventive measures, procedures, or updates about COVID-19 in the Philippines. Second, resources must be posted and published from the official Department of Health social media accounts, central and regional offices. Materials to be included or that were included in the study were published only from March to October 2020. And of course, materials should present no pure numerical data. Our concern was to look at language, the dominant language choice in each of these materials. We wanted to find out what is the most dominant language in which the vital information in the material is published or written. And here is an example of the kind of materials that we looked into, we were concerned about, and that we analyzed in the study. This is a material that is published by the Department of Health's central office, the national office. And for the data analysis and display, very simple. We analyzed our data using descriptive statistics, frequency, and percentage distribution with emphasis on the predominant language choice in the data set. And there are two types of data that will be displayed: the descriptive statistics, the results of the descriptive statistics, and also sample posters as excerpts from the corpus. I'm not going to show you all of the 238 materials because obviously that's going to be not very useful, but let me just show you some samples of materials that were published in the most dominant language type for every cross-section of data. Now let's begin with the Luzon dataset. For the Luzon dataset, oh, by the way, we just collected sample materials from representative regions in the country. Needless to say, we did not, for example, for the Luzon dataset, we did not collect data from the National Capital Region, because in the National Capital Region, there really is just Tagalog and English. There is no other mother tongue. So we needed regions that had another mother tongue besides the dominant languages, English and Tagalog. So for the Luzon dataset, we collected data from Region 1, Region 2, and Region 5. And looking at the data, for the Luzon dataset, the most dominant language choice is totally Tagalog. 42% of all materials published and that were included in the corpus of the study had been published using Tagalog as the medium. 48% were published using predominantly Tagalog with some English. There is no material that was published in totally English, but look at the data, the Luzon dataset for totally mother tongue. There's only 7% of all materials. And this is quite alarming considering that even in Luzon, there are many other languages. There are many other mother tongues that compete with English and Tagalog for dominance. Here is a sample material from the Luzon data set. This is a material with predominantly Tagalog with some English as the most frequently chosen language choice. So as you see, this is the two dominant languages, Tagalog and English, are indeed quite clearly chosen in this data set. And this poster is an example of it. How about the Visayan data set? We collected data from region 6, 7, and 8. If we combine the results for both totally English and totally Tagalog, this will account for 60% of all materials published in the two dominant languages. You look at totally mother tongue, and that's just about 21%. 1 in every 5 materials produced in the Visayas is published in the mother tongue. This is a better result compared to the Luzon dataset, but even so, while 1 out of 5 materials are published in the mother tongue for the Visayan dataset, 3 out of 5 are published in either English or Tagalog, with the remaining being published using predominantly Tagalog with some English. Here is an example of a poster, of a totally Tagalog poster, which is the most frequently chosen language in the Visayan dataset. Right. For the Mindanao data set, because maybe the Mindanao island group is the most richly diverse island group in the country, and we had regions 9, 11, and 13 uh, as the sample regions. We've observed some varieties in the combinations of the language types in this data set. But if you look at the data, it remains that Tagalog, predominantly Tagalog with some English, is the most dominant language choice. If you look at mother tongue, in fact, only one of all materials from the Mindanao dataset were published in the mother tongue. And uh, look at Tagalog. Tagalog remains another dominant language choice in the materials in the Mindanao dataset with 16%. And then if we are going to again juxtapose this in the language ecology of the island group, we will see that many of the Mindanao mother tongues are sidelined by this, are sidelined as evidenced by this findings or results in the data set. When we put together all of the materials and we analyzed, here is a sample poster for the Mindanao data set. When we analyzed all of the data, this is the overall result for the entire Philippine data set. The most common language choice for all materials published by the Department of Health is, well, almost tied, would be totally English and totally Tagalog with 27% and 28% respectively. More than half of all materials that are now being published or that were published are published using the two dominant languages in the country, with only 7.6% of the materials published in totally mother tongue. And elsewhere, you are going to look at also predominantly Tagalog with some English, a combination of the two dominant languages as the most common language type as well. And very little evidence of the use or choice of mother tongue in all of these materials. Here is a sample, a combination of English and Tagalog language choice in a material that's published by the Department of Health, Region 9. That is in, I understand that is in Mindanao. Now, just to give you a brief rundown of the findings, no? In summary, the descriptive and cross-sectional analysis of the 238 information materials points to evidence that certain languages were chosen more frequently than others, as seen in the frequency counts and the percentage distribution. This pattern was observed when data were analyzed all together as a Philippine data set and as cross-section, where the materials were called. The Luzon dataset, Visayas dataset, and Mindanao dataset all point to the dominant languages, English and Tagalog, as the common and most preferred language choice in this official COVID-19 materials. Now, in conclusion, we say that the hegemonic presence of major languages was observed, as most of the information materials were published in Tagalog and English, while the mother tongues were unequally represented. This is even more alarming when you look at, some of the recent news we hear in the Philippines. For example, the Philippines had one of the lowest scores in English reading in an international reading test that was conducted recently. And if you are going to look at the data from that perspective, how sure are we that the materials we publish in English and Tagalog are in fact understood by most people, are understood by some of the most vulnerable sectors of society? Discussed, therefore, the backdrop of the Philippines language ecology, the findings point to how more Filipinos may be at risk of contracting the virus, as the languages in which life-saving information are presented are limited, inaccessible, and obscure in the time of the pandemic. And viewed from the lens of language rights, we see this as an evidence of the existence of language injustice in the time of a global health emergency. In this study, language injustice was seen in the way that choice of language in official COVID-19 materials unequally favored the major languages over the mother tongues. And we are not here to say that, when we say language choice in the context of language justice, we are not here to say that, the institutions and the agencies have to produce materials all in the mother tongues. We're just here to say that there has to be greater representation of mother tongues in these materials. What is equal is not 50-50. It's not 50% and for the dominant languages and 50% for the mother tongues. Just like how you would do testing for COVID-19 in areas where there's a high incidence of infection. I think that when you look at the language issue at hand in this scenario, we've got to aggressively encourage institutions and agencies to produce materials that are accessible and understandable among individuals in that particular area. And in this case, there has to be greater representation of the mother tongues of the other local languages. And for the recommendations, we wanted the recommendations to be really very practical and straightforward. We wanted them to be very useful. So here are just some of the recommendations we had in mind. That first, of course, government institutions such as the Department of Health, who are duty bound to disseminate information, must be able to do so by capitalizing on the rich multilingual context of the Philippines to reach out to more individuals. Needless to say, knowledge production and dissemination in the time of the pandemic must ensure representation of speakers of the minority languages and the mother tongues. And I understand you may be thinking, that has a lot of logistical problems, because how do you exactly involve different speakers when in fact we live at a time when we cannot even face each other? We have to socially distance from one another. How do you exactly do that? And that is where our technological capacity has to come into play. Definitely, and you'd also say, these agencies that are concerned with response and mitigation, they're not even thinking about language. They're thinking about COVID-19 primarily as a medical and an economic issue. So you really cannot force them to pay even more attention on the languages that they use in producing materials about COVID-19. That's why in the third recommendation, we say there has to be greater involvement from non-government organizations working to make COVID-19 information accessible um, working to make COVID-19 information accessible. There has to be greater involvement from organizations like that. I don't know in countries where you are from, but in the Philippines, for example, we have an organization that was born at the University of the Philippines. They call themselves Language Warriors PH, and they put together this repository of materials about COVID-19 where they translate materials, especially vital information regarding COVID-19 in different languages, so that this information will be accessible to speakers of those languages. And I think there has to be, if the central agencies cannot produce materials in the mother tongues, the non-government organizations must be tapped. And I think on the individual level, it is also our responsibility to try to engage more people in the COVID-19 discourse by making sure that when there is an opportunity, we talk about COVID-19 using languages where other individuals, where our friends, family members, and our students maybe understand us. And that would include, of course, making sure that when we interact in our social media accounts, we are able to share also a variety of materials that use a variety of languages, just to make the discussion even more inclusive. When the language of the discussion regarding COVID-19 is inclusive, we believe that we will have a better response program and course of action towards COVID-19 resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edward J. Quinto, for that very interesting topic about language justice that also touch um, mother tongue based multilingual education, not just in the Philippines, but also in other parts of Asia and other parts of the world. So, Dr. Quinto, we have a question here. Um, what is your opinion on the abrogation or the pending abrogation of the mother tongue based multilingual education in the Philippines? And how can this be connected to your topic on language justice?
I thank you very much, Dr. Medriano, for that question. Of course, I stand with the Linguistic Society of the Philippines. I am against this. I think we need to empower the mother tongues even more so. The time has been so short in order for us to even make any conclusion. But current research on mother tongue and multilingual education policies all around the world prove that when we are able to teach our children mother tongues in the first few years of development, they are able to make better, they're able to become even more proficient in in other languages. And I think that, in particular context with what I talked about this afternoon, I say, I am against that, because just as I have argued, we need to involve more people who speak many more different languages, and we cannot do that by sidelining the mother tongues. The point of the talk is simply to really use our local languages and take the power there is in these local languages in order for us to reach out to people, to empower them, and for them to really fully understand the causes, effects, impacts, and mitigation of COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Dr. Quinto. And another question from the lens of translation. So, do you think that translation may have a problem or may have caused the problem of why such materials are not translated in the mother tongue? Because some documents in the Philippines say that with the MTBMLE, some grade students are having a difficult time understanding materials in their mother tongue because their parents as well as their grandparents do not understand these materials in their mother tongue because it's too technical and it's beyond their understanding. That's the reason the government may have had supported or accepted the use of English and Filipino only in all COVID-19 materials.
Well, meaning is in the mind, right? It's not really in it's not really in the words or in the languages. That's why we say there are no two languages that are exactly the same. I think translation may have been an issue, but where vocabulary items in one language do not have direct translations in another language, I think, language is dynamic enough in order for us to make meaning through linguistic creativity. And I think that should really, that should not really be an issue when it comes to producing and disseminating this information.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Quinto, another question. With your study on language choice, were you and your students able to check some neologisms or new words that people were able to concoct during this pandemic?
There are a lot of neologisms that have in fact been produced or that have developed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. We were not primarily concerned with this aspect of language in the time of COVID-19 in this research project. I can tell you that the other aspect of our research project research has to do with deployment or the semiotic aspect of language display. I mean, we also try to analyze the size, the fonts, the colors, the positioning of what languages in these materials. That's something that is up for another presentation or up for another paper. But as far as neologisms are concerned, I think there are a lot of them and we need to talk about them. because it's also one way of making sure that, you know, that COVID-19 is understood. These are words that are born out of popular culture, and when they are born out of popular culture, they are more accessible to even more people. And in that regard, we really need to encourage research on the vocabulary of COVID-19.
Yes, thank you. And I think this is the last question that I got here on the chat box. Maybe there are a lot more. So what can we, okay, let me just check. Okay, what can we learn from your study in the lens of lexicography?
I wasn't really paying attention much on lexicography. I think the question is somewhat similar to the previous question on neologism,
Mhm.
and I think, just maybe for the most part, we just have to pay attention to the dynamics of languages in the time of COVID-19, because although there are different languages that are competing. For example, in the case of this studies context, we can still find patterns and trends when it comes to language use and vocabulary use. And in that regard, some people might also be interested to investigate that in their own research regarding language and COVID-19.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Quinto. I think this discussion is getting more linguistic. So we have here another question. I think I'm not the best person to answer this. It says here, so this is now a topic on the lectals in linguistics. So who uses the acrolex and who uses the basilex? So, in your study, Dr. Quinto, we can still see that not a lot of materials are actually written in Basilex, but most are in Acrolex, of which it
Mhm.
is have you have mentioned earlier. It is indeed not justified because most of the readers would want to read materials in their mother tongue. So, what can you say about this?
Understandably so, because the materials were produced by the Department of Health, the central agency concerned in disseminating information regarding COVID-19. So you would expect that if, for example, a material is for national dissemination, the Department of Health would make its best effort to make it, reach an acrolectal level of language use. And yet, it's interesting because if you are going to just make, random observations of the data, there are also efforts from the Department of Health, central and regional offices to try to bring down the level or the register from acrolect to mesolect, not really basilect. We did not see that. We did not see that in the data. I did not see that in the data. But I think in the discussion of lects, in the lectal discussion, in this study, what is really more pressing, I think the use of the acrolect, mesolect, and basilect continuum is off tangent. I think what is more relevant is the discussion of geolects, where you try to connect the geographic location to the type or in the kind of language use that is dominant in that particular geographic location. And interestingly enough, even if you look at the data from a geolectal perspective, there seems to be a trend in which, regardless of the data set that is being observed, there really is an effort to present information, COVID-19 information, using language that is very formal and that is written in either English or Tagalog.
That's very good. Thank you very much. And Dr. Quinto, I'm still waiting for other questions. And while waiting for the other questions, I have this is not a question, but more of like a suggestion. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's actually not a suggestion, but it's a question. Okay. Since Mapua University, the university you're representing, is actually one of the best universities in the Philippines. So if you are given a chance to talk to this specific government agency, what can your university suggest?
I thank you very much, Dr. Medriano, for that very wonderful question. For that very wonderful question. Our suggestions, my suggestions have been um, clearly written in the recommendations. And although I've only put bullets in the recommendation. Thank you for asking because I now can talk about a little more detail. The Development Academy of the Philippines recently launched support programs for the development of materials that are produced from ground up. And when you say from ground up, this is a community of practice approach in which members of local communities are the ones who discuss, conduct focus group discussions, and produce, revise, and publish materials for their own community social media pages. And I think these are the types of programs that our government and our Department of Health must support, because in this way we are sure that the people who consume when the people who consume this information are the ones who develop them, information becomes absolutely accessible. And now more than ever, just like in the medical, economic, and environmental uh, aspects of this uh, global emergency, we need to espouse an inclusive approach. We need to include more communities, we need to include more individuals, and we need to empower them in order for them to develop materials that they themselves understand and therefore are very much motivated to also disseminate with other members of their community. Thank you, Dr. Medriana, for that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Quinto. And as a parting message to our 72 participants who are actually live right here on Zoom, what can other countries get out of this research project that you've had with your students?
Thank you again for the beautiful opportunity to give a parting word. But I just wanna address one question by Rowan in the chat box.
Ah,
She
yes.
asked, "May I know why Tagalog was the language used among the languages, not the term Filipino?" The simple answer is because Filipino is a political term and Tagalog is the linguistic
Term.
term. So when you say Filipino, it can even refer to any other Filipino language. But when you say Tagalog, we are now referring to Tagalog and all its language systems, phonology, vocabulary, lexicon, all that stuff. Thank you for that, for asking that question. And just like what I said in the beginning, we want language researchers to be more proactive in producing research that have a direct impact in the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And even if the sustainable development goals seem to be out of touch for many language researchers who just simply want to present their paper and publish their paper for the sake maybe of professional development, I hope that you are able to do so using a research agenda that will have an actual impact in the lives of people, the students we teach, and the members of the community where we belong to. One such example, hopefully, is the kind of research that we did and the kind of research that I also presented this afternoon. This is just one of the research projects that I am currently involved in relation to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In one research project that I am involved in, we investigated the plight of the Filipino deaf community and the misuse of the Filipino Sign Language in the time of COVID-19. These are the types of studies that I am currently interested in, and the types of language studies that I think we have to challenge ourselves to participate in order for our findings and our research to have an actual impact in the current context. And when our study have an actual impact in our current context, we are in fact able to make the lives of other people a little bit better. And isn't that what we all want?
That's
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Quinto, I think we learned one thing with that parting message today. So, for those who are sitting as panel members in thesis or dissertation researches, I think we can also ask our students, like, what will be and what is the impact of their research? Because doing a research project is not just doing it for the sake of graduating in your master's or PhD or doctorate degree, but more of you graduating your master's and you graduating your PhD with you having a contribution, not just to the body of knowledge of your specific area, but also to the government or to the world. Thank you very much, Dr. Quinto, for a very
Thank you.
intelligible talk on language justice.
Thank you.
So I don't see any questions now. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for accepting our invitation to be one of our plenary speakers. And I hope that we can invite you soon in future conferences again. So
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. So now, as we move on to the next part of our program, let us now watch another traditional dance from Indonesia. Thank you very much. With all these traditional dance videos that we've watched, it seemed like we were transported to Indonesia with these dances. Great dances indeed. So, our sixth and last speaker in this international virtual conference is an associate professor at the English Teaching Study Program of the Universitas Kristen Indonesia. Besides being a lecturer, he's also a senior researcher, and his research interests are in first language, second language, language teaching, language testing, curriculum and development, psycholinguistics, and linguistics. He has been invited as a speaker to some national and international conferences. He has also published many articles in the national accredited journals and reputable international journals such as the Asian ESP Journal, the Asian EFL Journal, IJPR, IOP, JET, TEFL Asia Journal, the IAFOR Journal, and the ICAL, APCASI, and Arisuta Research Center Journal. Aside from publishing journals, he is also a journal reviewer for these journals: Comunita Servicio, International Journal of English Language Literature, Jurnal Dinamika Pendidikan, and International Journal of Academic Library and Information Science. Because of his work in research, he received government grants in research from the Indonesian government. He has been a reviewer in some national and international journals that I've just mentioned and received some national and international grants in research. Let us all give a round of applause to our sixth and final plenary speaker in this international virtual conference. Let us all welcome Dr. Lamhot Naibaho.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And am I audible, Mr. Raymond?
Yes.
Okay, right. Thank you, Mr. Raymond, for a very nice introduction. And today I'm given a chance to present one of books that I'm working on. It's a research methodology. So the topic that I'm going to present today is about developing teachers' professionalism in pedagogical competencies through conducting classroom action research. So actually the the focus of my presentation today is about classroom action research. And it is I'm working on a book but before the book is published, that I would like to disseminate it, to get critiques, suggestion from the audience that I could put into the books. Yeah. Okay, right, everybody. So just give me chance today to present my topics. Next, please. Right. So before we talk so far about classroom exam research, then I would like to explore. Let's explore a little bit about the history of the classroom exam research. So before becoming a classroom exam research, it was firstly known as the action research. And it was first introduced by an American social psychologist. His name is Carl Lewin. He's a psychologist in 1946. Okay, this research was conducted to answer various problems and anxieties in the socio-humanities, industrial, such as social problems and psychological problems, and so on. Yeah, and also it's quite similar to R&D research, where at the first it was research and development before it was conducted in education field. Yeah, which was initially used for the business and industrial world, then developed in the field of education, under education, and the name become educational research and development, or ER&D. Next, please. Okay, around 1952 or
Sorry,
19.
Sorry, Lamhot, we can't see the slide.
Hello, Franz? Franz? Okay, wait, Mr. Paul, Mr. Raymond. Can you see, Mr. Raymond?
Yeah, yes, we can see the slide now. Thank you, Lamhot.
Right. So this is still the history of classroom exam research. So around 1952 or 1953, Stephen Covey used this model in the field of education, so that his name changed into classroom exam research. So as I told you before, previously it is named as action research. Then Lewin and Covey's ideas were continued and developed by Stephen Camis, Robin McTaggart, and John Elliott, Dave Ebbett, in form of classroom action research around 1970 until 1980. So in the past time, this classroom action research was also inspired by the scientific approach advocated by the philosopher John Dewey in 1910 in his book, in one of his books, How We Think and the Source of Science on Education. So meanwhile, in Indonesia, classroom exam research has only started to become known in the late 1980s until 1990s until today. So I will talk about classroom exam research in Indonesia. So why does classroom exam research in Indonesia become so familiar? Because our government, through ministries of education, try to make effort to improve the quality of education as the main focus of our education development today. And the effectiveness of learning by professionals, teachers, is a major factor in improving the quality of the education itself. Teachers as professionals educators with the main task of educating, teaching, guiding, directing, training, assessing, and evaluating students requires continuous professional improvements. So therefore, classroom exam research has enormous potential to improve learning if it is implemented properly. So there is a policy in Indonesia right now, which is determined by the Ministry of Education, that every teacher, when they would like to have their certification and the improvement of their academic titles, they have to do such kind of classroom exam research. That is the rules. Okay, so let's go into the definitions of classroom exam research. So classroom exam research is a study of a social problem carried out to increase the element of action in it where all processes are influential and necessary as an evaluation material to develop into a professional. So that is defined by John Eliot, while chemist and Taggart argues that a classroom action research is a form of collective self-reflection on a social situation in order to improve reasoning and fairness in situations where action research is carried out. So from the two definitions, I tried to synthesize that a classroom action research is a form of reflective study by the actors of the action. Next, please. Right, classroom action research, there are some purposes of classroom action research. First is making researcher, whether a teacher or lecturer, to be more active, to be more critical, to be more innovative and more creative in conveying learning to their students. The second purpose is that a teacher can improve the learning process he provides in response to the problem that occur in his class. And why does it so? I can explain to you a bit later after this session. So, and the third purpose is helping a teacher in finding solution to the problems that arise in his classroom. And the fourth purpose is making a teacher more sensitive and responsive to the dynamics of learning in the classroom. And the last is improving the level of professionalism of teachers and the quality of education. So the competency of the teachers, such as pedagogic competence, professional competence, and then social competence, and the last is personality competence. So efforts on improving the four competencies are the effort to improve teachers' professionalism. So increased professionalism can be achieved by teachers by carrying out a classroom action research on an ongoing basis. Next, please. Okay, so how does CAR improve teachers' professionalism? So first is the development of teachers' competence in solving learning problems includes the quality of the content, efficiency, and then the effectiveness of learning processes and students' learning outcomes. And the second is improving learning abilities will have an impact on increasing the personal, social, and also the professional competence of the teachers itself. And the third is classroom action research is a way for teachers to organize learning based on their own experiences in collaboration with other teachers or with other researchers. Okay, and the fourth, classroom action research is a method for empowering teachers to be able to support the school's creative performance. And the fifth is classroom action research can facilitate teachers to develop an understanding of pedagogy in order to improve the learning. Okay, next. Okay, let's see some characteristic of classroom action research. First is classroom exam research is a classroom research procedure designed to solve real problem experienced by teachers. So as I told before, that how could classroom exam research improve the teacher's creativity? Because actually before conducting the classroom exam research, the teacher of the classroom or the researcher as a teacher try to solve problem he faces in the classroom or he got in the classroom. So for example, when the students have learning result, lower learning result, so in a subject, so of course there must be a problem when the students could not attain the score criterion of success. Yeah, success score criterion. Of course, it's a problem for the teachers. So in order to improve the learning result of the students, of course, classroom exam research is the most suitable research methodology to be implemented in the classroom to give solution to the students. So the learning result could be improved. Okay, the classroom exam research method is applied contextually because the source of the problem is from the teacher's class or the researcher class actually. Okay, in the sense that the variables studied are always related to the state of the class itself. Okay, and third is classroom exam research is directed at an improvement in the quality of learning. And then the last is classroom exam research is flexible and easy to adapt. Next, please. Okay, things that need to be considered before designing the classroom exam research. First is classroom exam research is a tool for improving or perfecting the quality of the implementation of daily tasks or teaching and educating of our teachers. And then the classroom exam research, data collection, the second is data collection technique should not be take up a lot of time because classroom exam research also, when we are conducting a classroom exam research, there must be a time bond to the research. Why? Because besides being a researcher, we have not to forget our main duty as a teacher. That is why classroom exam research should not take up a lot of time. And then the third things to be considered is the research methodology should provide the opportunity for teachers to formulate strong hypotheses and then determine strategies that are suitable for the atmosphere and circumstances of the classroom in which he or she teaches. And the fourth is the problem that is arise should be a problem that is felt and arise from the area of its own duties. Okay, when we heard this, sometimes when some students of the university who are going to end up their studies at the university try to implement a classroom exam research as their undergraduate thesis. So how could it be? Is it possible for students to conduct a classroom exam research, or even though they are not being a teacher yet? Of course, yes, but with a little bit adaptation, yeah. Okay, and then the last is classroom exam research was developed towards covering the scope of the schools. So as I told you at the previous, that when the topics of the research is out of the school scope or class scope, of course, we can still call it an action research. but not a classroom action research, because a classroom action research, the topics of the research for a classroom action research only cover the scope of the school. Next, please. Right. So when does a teacher start a classroom action research? So when the teacher get a problem in his class and he wants to improve the quality of learning, which is his responsibility, and at the same time he wants to involve his students in the learning process. So when he found a problems, then it is good to start a classroom action research at school or for the teachers. So the research takes place in real situation where immediately problem solving is required and the results are immediately applied, practiced in the situation concerned. Next, please. Okay, there are some principles of classroom action research. First is real activities in routine situations, because being a researcher, he's also being a teacher. So doing classroom action research is actually doing it in the teacher's routine situations. And then the existence of self-awareness to improve work. So the second principle requires that when the teacher has already a self-awareness on improving his teaching quality, teaching methodology, then of course that's a good way to be done through implementing classroom action research. So next is classroom action research before it was conducted or before it was implemented. So it should be based on SWOT, that is strength, weakness, opportunity, and treatment. Okay, so this is the base before conducting the classroom action research in the classroom by the teachers. Before he's conducting it, of course, he has to find what is the weakness. What is the weakness of the students, or what is the weakness found in his teaching strategies or teaching methodology he is or she is implemented. And then, of course, there must be opportunity when he is implementing this research. The opportunity is that the learning result of the students or his teaching experiences or his teaching strategies could be improved when the classroom action research has already been implemented. And of course, also the other things, yeah. And then the four principles of classroom action research, it is empirical and systematic effort. And the laws is it should follow the SMART principles in planning. Yeah. So what I mean by SMART is S stand for specific, not very general. It means that when conducting action research, the topics that we are discussing or observing, it should be specific, not to be very general, because it is specific to the problem we faced as a teacher. And then M stands for manageable. So the classroom action research that we are conducting should be manageable. Okay, and A stands for achievable or acceptable. So what we are doing in the classroom action research should be environmentally acceptable. And then R stands for realistic, of course, not out of reach. Yeah. And then the last is T, it's a time bounded and planned. Next, please. Right, so what are the outputs of classroom action research? The first output is the improvement of students' learning performance in school. So after conducting a classroom exam research, of course, we do hope that students' learning performance could be improved. And then the second output is the improvement of the quality of the learning process in the classroom. Okay, because why it is said that learning quality improve, learning process quality improve, because we try to implement new strategies, new medias, new teaching methodologies to the students. So the students are not going to be bored of teacher-centered learning strategy. Okay, so they try to experience new styles in teachings, yeah, in teaching and learning process. And the third output is the improvement of the quality of the media used, learning aids and the other learning resources. Okay, and the fourth output is improvement of the quality of evaluation procedures and tools to measure student learning processes and outcomes. And the fifth, of course, the improvement of the school's education by solving students' problem that they faced during teaching and learning process in the classroom. And the sixth is the improvement of the quality of curriculum implementation and students' competency development in schools. Okay, next please. Okay, there are some classroom exam research models that are often used in the world of education. So the first model is designed by Carl-Lewin. So it is called the Carl-Lewin models. His approach involves a spiral of steps, each of which is composed . Hello? Hello?
Yes, it's clear, Mr. Rahmat.
So, move to the next slide. No, before. Okay, Chemis and Taggart. So the second model is Chemis and Taggart. A similar model as Lewin's of the cyclical natures of the typical action research processes. Each cycle has a 4 steps, that is plan, action, observe, and reflect. In this model, it shows how reflection leads on to the next stage of planning. The planning stage is not separate from the previous stage, but it is embedded in action and reflection. The short and multiple cycles are to ensure rigor, as it is intended that the end result is change. Effective action research depends upon the agreement and the commitment of those affected by it. This is achieved by involving them directly in the research processes. So this model is introduced by Chemis and Taggart. And next, please, the model of Cohen et al. So it is simply the same with the first model. Okay, next, please. And then the next model. Okay, John Elliott models. So John Elliott points out that in using Lewin's model, one might assume that the general idea can be fixed in advance, that reconnaissance is merely fact-finding, and that implementation is a very straightforward process. Elliott argues that the general idea should be allowed to change, that reconnaissance should include analysis as well as fact-finding, and should occur throughout the action research process, not only at the beginning. And then John Elliott says that implementation is not a simple task, and one should monitor the effects of action before evaluation takes place. That is, this model is designed by John Elliott, and it's quite complex rather than the first and then the second and the third. And next, please. The next model is designed by Dave Abbott. Yeah, Abbott questioned Lewin's model actually by claiming that the spiral is not most useful metaphor or image to use to think about the action research process. He uses a series of successive cycles that enables the possibility of providing evaluative feedback within and between the cycles of action. And the last model is introduced by Hopkins, and it is known as Hopkins model. And this is the model, right? So it's quite similar also to the first, second, and third. Okay, from the 6 models, next please. From the 6 models, I can synthesize that from all of the classroom action research models, I can synthesize that the concept of action research or classroom action research is applied through a sequence consisting of several cyclical stages. The cycle in the classroom action research consists of 4 stages. They are planning the action, and then taking the action, and then observing or observing, and the last is analyzing or evaluating or reflecting. Next, please. Okay. So what should we do in each cycles in the classroom action research? So first is planning. At this stage, the researcher will compile in details the action that will be carried out during the classroom action research, both the steps, materials, teaching materials, techniques, teaching methods, as well as the obstacles that might occur when the classroom action research is taking place. And also here, besides that, the teachers or the researchers should well prepare on the lesson plans that he is going to teach, to use during the treatment or during the actions of the classroom action research. And then at this stage, the researcher also designed a test instrument, or whether it is a pre-test, and then the post-test, and then required questionnaire. So before conducting the classroom action research, the researcher or the teacher should provide everything as good as possible. So once he go into the field doing the action, of course, there won't be mistake or there won't be missed. Okay, by preparing a careful and detailed action planning to determine the smooth running of the classroom action research later, it is hoped that those what he had planned before conducting the research won't be changed, after giving the treatment, or when or after giving the treatment. Okay, next please. Okay, in the action It is the realization of all the plans that have been prepared at the action planning stages. This implementation is done in the classroom. So whatever you have planned at the planning stages should be conducted into action or should be taken into action, and it must be done in the classroom together with the students and the collaborators or the team of the researcher. Next, please. Okay, observation. Yeah. So what do we do in observation? At this stage, the researcher will collect and obtain data from planning to implementation, as well as the response or impact of the action that have been taken. This is quite a complex step. In observation stages is a quite complex steps. So it requires collaboration with other teachers or other researchers, and can even be assisted by outsiders in its implementation, so that it is called a collaborative. So classroom action research is actually called as a collaborative research. So, okay, for that, observation has some principle. So the first is there is planning between researcher and the observer. So of course, when conducting this classroom action research, between you and your co-researcher or your collaborator, both you have to plan. Both of you have planning together, yeah, in conducting the classroom action research. So the second principle is the focus of observation is established jointly between the researcher and also the observer, because it is impossible for a researcher only designed, only established the focus of the observation. So he and the observer should know it together or should design it together. So the observer knows what to do during implementing action and during implementing observation. Okay, the third principle is there are shared criteria between researchers and observers. Of course, yes, there must be set criteria between both of them. Observers are expected in their fields, and the observer or our collaborative or our co-researcher should be an expert in the field of our research, and of course he or she must have good abilities in observing to make the result better. Okay, so in addition to having skill in observing, observers are expected to have skills in first is avoid making unilateral interpretation, and the second is systematic and thorough note taking. Okay, next please. Okay, this is the last stages. So what should we do at evaluation and reflection stages is that this is the stage in processing the data. At this stage, the collaborator still plays a role in sharpening and reflection and evaluation. The data obtained were interpreted, analyzed, and synthesized. So what I mean by processing the data, so in these stages, whatever instrument you use during conducting the classroom action research in the stages, in the action stages, should be analyzed in this evaluation and reflection. Let's say when conducting your research, then you have non-test and test data. So like a set of structure test or grammar test, and then a set of questionnaires, a set of observation sheet, and a set of diary notes, and so on. So if you put those as the instruments of your research, of course, those data should be analyzed and should be interpreted on the evaluation and reflection stages. The result of the evaluation and reflection in each cycle are used as a reference to improve parts of the classroom action research at the next cycle. So on these stages also, you are going, you and as a researcher, and you and your friend as a research collaborator should be okay. The next stages of the cycles, are you going to continue it into next cycles or not, should be decided in these stages, that is in evaluation and reflection. Okay, improvement is an important keyword in this implementation of classroom action research in the following cycles, so that the stated research objective or indicators can be achieved after implementing the classroom action research. Okay, next please. Classroom action research indicators. So indicators are characteristic of classroom action research because this indicator is a critical point to determine whether the research is successful or not. Indicators can also be determined whether the research ends or not. So when conducting an a classroom action research, you have to have such indicators so that when to stop the research. Okay, so you know when to stop the research, yeah. When the students, or when the criteria, or when the indicator you determined in your research is achievable or achieved by the students, then you can decide to stop the classroom action research. And many misinterpretation and misperception occurred during in conducting classroom action research. We will talk it after this session. Yeah. Okay. Classroom action research indicators can be in the form of indicators of learning outcomes or process indicators. So learning outcome indicators are usually in the form of measurable numbers, like let's say 75 or 85 or 80, while process indicators are usually in the form of qualitative data, but this data can also be quantitative. Okay, although it is a qualitative data, still we can change it into quantitative data. Okay, classroom action research indicators can be categorized as individual indicators and classical indicators. So what is meant by individual indicators is you have a certain point, you have a certain indicators for each student to be success in your classroom action research. And then classical indicators means that what I mean by classical indicators, that the indicators you put in your research is the indicators for all of the students, not for individual. Okay, next please. Okay, classroom action research data analysis. we have in conducting classroom exam research, we have two types of data actually. They are quantitative data and then qualitative data. So quantitative data, it should be the data is in the form of numbers, either obtained from measurement results or obtained by converting qualitative data into quantitative data. And then the qualitative data in classroom exam research is data in the form of sentences or data categorized based on the quality of the object under study. Let's say, for example, good, bad, clever, frequent, and so on. So qualitative data can also be processed, be a processed data. However, qualitative data can be quantified. So that's it. And next, please. Okay, usually, as I told you before that, there were some instruments that might be used during conducting classroom exam research. I'll mention some of, but it is not a must for you as a researcher to put all of these to be the instruments of your classroom exam research when you are conducting it. So the classroom exam research data were collected according to the type of the data itself. Yeah. So let's say a test sheet. So this is a quantitative data actually, because it talks about number. So a test sheet is the way you collect the learning outcomes data. Yeah. It means that in order to measure the students' learning result, you use the test sheet. And then the second is observation sheet. So learning process data is collected through observation actually. So observation can be made in three ways according to the rule of the observer. Namely, it might be participatory observation, or passive observation, or spatial observation. So this belongs to a non-test instruments, yeah, where the data you obtained using observation sheet is qualitative data. So it's just like a description, or it's just like sentences that you need to check up or make a checklist, yeah, when observing something. So whether in conducting the classroom exam research, the researcher stick to the rules, stick to the plans you have designed before conducting the classroom exam research. And then the third is questionnaire. So questionnaires are usually also used in the classroom exam research to collect data such as perceptions, attitudes, and evaluations of learning processes, learning teaching processes. Okay, and the next is interview sheet. Yeah, questionnaire sheet and then interview sheet. Oh no, questionnaire goes to a non-test instrument, yeah, for classroom exam research. And then the next is interview guidance or interview sheets. So collecting the data can also be used through interview. Yeah, collecting the data through interview can also be used to strengthen the data from other instruments. So when analyzing, this is also a lot of mistakes were taking place in conducting the classroom exam research when the researcher used interview sheet as an instrument for non-test instrument. So they try to analyze the quantitative data and the interview data separately. While if it is in classroom exam research, it is not done that way, where the result of the interview sheet should be used to strengthen the quantitative data. And then the last is diary note. So diary note can also be used to strengthen data from other instruments and also provide information when you are analyzing another instrument. For example, when conducting your research, you have making treatments for, let's say, 3 times or 4 times of treatments, and then you come into conducting post-tests. But some of the research, some of the result, learning result of the student is showing very low still. Of course, you need the data from diary note to support why does this some students still got a lower score, while as a researcher you have tried to conduct the best at the action stages. So of course, being a teacher or being a researcher, you have to make your own note for which students are seriously participating in your teaching learning process, and which students or whose students are not participating well during the classroom action, during the treatment, during the implementation of the actions. Okay, so that is some instruments which is used in classroom exam research. Next, please. Okay, classroom exam research data analysis technique. In general, classroom exam research data analysis techniques and descriptive analysis usually use interactive models. Yeah, interactive analysis consists of 3 components, namely first is data reduction, data exposure, and then drawing conclusion. So selecting the data or data reduction, in this data selection step, you have to select the data which is relevant to the goal of improving learning. Irrelevant data can be discarded, and if deemed necessary, the participant teacher can add new data by recalling events and phenomena that occurred during the implementation of the action plan. Describing the data found or presenting the data using various display data such as histogram, pie chart, tables, graphs, and so on, and drawing conclusion. So from the description of the result, from the result of the data, or from the result of the data descriptions, to be more comprehensive, it is necessary to draw conclusions inductively. Okay, there are some important notes in conducting the classroom exam research. First is, wait, just a bit more slides to present. So in classroom exam research, what often happens and is carried out by researchers is ending a car where the researcher determines the number of cycles to be applied. Now, this is one of the funniest things. Why do I say so? So before conducting an action research, the researcher and his co-researcher has already determined the number of the cycles which are going to be implemented in his research, while it is not allowed actually to be implemented in the classroom exam research. The truth is that if the researcher indicators have been reached, the classroom exam research can be ended. So that is the only, that is the most important thing to be remembered. So never decide the number of cycles before conducting your classroom exam research. Okay, the second is the tendency that is often found in, next slide. I'm talking at the next slide. Okay, this is it. The second is the tendency that is often found in classroom exchange research only focuses on quantitative data, and processes data is almost neglected. Even though there is a process data, the presentation and the analysis is not optimal, both in terms of breadth and depth. So this is not also good to be conducted in classroom exchange research. So all of the data should be analyzed and should be involving one each other, should be strengthening one each other. While, as we know, the motto of classroom exchange research is that a good result drew a good processes, while the process data is not analyzed optimally. So that's not good in classroom exchange research. And the third is, it is often found that the evaluation data, which is the basis for improvement from a certain cycle, let's say cycle 1 to the next cycle, cycle 2, is not presented by the researcher in the planning of the next cycle. So while, as I said before, that in order to be able to continue into next cycle of the classroom exchange research, so you have to provide what is the weaknesses you have at the previous cycle. So, and what are the problems? And those problems happen in the first cycle should be solved in the next cycle, or should be more focused in the next cycle. The fourth is, in classroom exchange research, should there be a hypothesis? Okay, so this is often a question for a researcher. So the answer is maybe yes, maybe no. Yeah, if there is, then it is called an action hypothesis and tested statistically using a different test or t-test, which is the simplest. Okay, the fifth is, classroom exchange research is like a doctor who makes a diagnosis before giving a treatment to his patient. This means that the first things a classroom exchange researcher does in class is diagnosis to find a problem, and before giving action to cure the disease or the problem he found in his classroom. The sixth is, in certain situations, classroom exchange research data may be need to be done with trustworthiness. This is mainly done with data that has multiple interpretation. This is different from when the data collection instruments has been validated or calibrated. The seventh is, there is another question from the researcher that learning method or strategies can or cannot be replaced in a research series. The answer is no. The learning method or strategies can only be revised and improved during conducting action research, classroom action research. And the eighth is, classroom action research from the perspective of research method can be categorized as a research method, namely mixed method or mixing method, as it is said by Creswell, 2003. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you for listening, watching, and understanding. Time belongs to Mr. Raymond, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naibaho, for that very informative presentation on classroom action research. And now, Dr. Lamhot, we have here questions from our participants. I'll shoot the first question from Nainik Husnita. So what are the strategies or another step for students to implement the action research for their thesis research?
Okay. Should I directly answer the question?
Yes, Dr. Lamhot.
Okay, right. So for the students, when they are working for undergraduate thesis and they wish to conduct the research by using classroom exam research is not prohibited. It's allowed, but there must be some adaptation for the students in order to be able to conduct the research. Of course, the adaptation is that your collaborators during implementing the classroom action research should not be taken from your college, yeah. It should not be so you have to invite other experienced collaborator, such as the teacher, which is involved in the classroom. So because the teacher itself knows more situations of his student or her students, or you can just discuss with her or him whether you will do the action, or the teacher will do the action and you become the collaborator, or vice versa. You are as a researcher and you conduct the treatment, and your teacher, the teacher of the classroom become the collaborator. So the next adoptions is before conducting the classroom exam research, because you are not having previous knowledge of problems in somebody's class or the teacher's class. Of course, you have to do a previous observation before conducting the classroom exam research, so you know what to do, so you know what the problem exactly. So it's quite different when the classroom exam research conducted by the teacher of the class, because he doesn't need previous to conduct a previous experiment or previous observation before he designed to do a classroom exam research. So that is what I would like to suggest you to do.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Lamhot. So that answers Naniek Husnita's question. So we have here another question. I am Yon A. I want to ask, many people said that classroom action research is not appropriate or applicable for doctor program because it's too simple and too easy to implement. What is your opinion about this statement, sir?
Okay, right. That's a very good question. I think yes, that is according to some people's paradigm. But of course, it is applicable for doctoral dissertation or PhD research. Why do I say so? Uh, but you, as a PhD students or as a doctoral students, you have to be able to conduct a more depth analysis when conducting a research, a classroom exam research for your PhD dissertation or doctoral dissertation. And even you can try to involve, let's say, comparing more strategies used while conducting the exam research in a PhD dissertation. So it is very possible to be done at the end of your study at PhD, but you have to do a more depth analysis comparing to those did in undergraduate thesis or baccalaureate degree.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lamhot. And now I think may we unmute Yogi Saputra Mahmood because he or she has a direct question to Dr. Lamhot.
Okay.
Yogi? He, yes. So I think, okay.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, Dr. Lamhot.
Hello, good afternoon, Mr.
Yeah.
Yogi.
My name is Yogi. I'm from President University Indonesia. So thank you so much for the insightful presentation about CAR. So basically, I recently conducted a webinar about teacher professional development to Indonesian teachers, and I actually recently received some information from classroom teachers that uh, classroom action research studies that employ quantitative measurements or experimental research designs are more preferable to be funded by the policymakers compared to the qualitative one. So, do you have any comments about that? Because, in my opinion, I'm a qualitative researcher actually. In my opinion, like some approaches such as self-study and the narrative inquiry are also equally important to enlighten the challenges faced by the students, by the teachers, and then the students themselves. And then the second one, do you have any comment about the experimental research design conducted in the classroom action research? For example, like this, there is a classroom, and then there is a teacher who notices that there is a speaking problem faced by his or her students, and then he or she conducted a research. Let's say he or she conducted a research by using task-based language teaching or communicative language teaching to improve his or her students' speaking ability. So there will be like control group and experimental group, right? So control group, let's say the teacher simply like gives lectures, okay, just very conventional teaching method. While in experimental group, she or he tries to maximize what he or she does in the classroom, like by using CLT to improve the students' speaking ability. So do you think it's not justified for the students, like it's not fair for the students in the control group? Because we know that we can maximize the method of teaching by using CLT, let's say, instead of like conventional lecture. Because I actually find this kind of designs in classroom action research papers conducted by the teachers. Thank you. So those are my questions.
All right. Let me respond to the first question, because seems that it is more attractive to talk rather than the first. Yeah. Okay. Right. So that is the case you found during your trainings, yeah, program. So let's say there is a researcher conducting a classroom action research, but at the content of the report, he includes some information of like experimental research. He puts a control group and then a treatment group. Yeah. So I think this is a misperception. There is a misperception in conducting the classroom action research in this in the case you found. Yeah. While as it is required at the classroom action research, so it should be done only in one class. Because as I told you before, that classroom action research is a contextual research where when you found a problem in your own class, then it is best for you to conduct a classroom action research. Yeah, a classroom action research to solve the problem. So so it's quite different with experimental design, where you have to have two classes as a control and as a treatment group. So what I would like to say is, okay, some teachers or some researchers, when conducting a classroom action research, but they find it difficult to do a best report that's suitable to classroom action research procedures of writing reports. Okay, so there's some miss things, yeah. So yeah, a lot of researchers do like that, and even in quality when they are doing qualitative research, but still we can find population and also samples in the methodology of the research. So I think they make some mistakes, yeah, during writing the proposal or the research report. And there must be something missing in their paradigm. Okay, so what about the first question? Could you, since that you are differentiating experimental research and classroom exam research, is it? You are muted still, Mr. Yogi.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So basically, what I would like to ask is that, in the paradigm of teacher professional development, is it possible, like in Indonesia, to like encourage teachers to conduct like more qualitative approach or qualitative research, such as self-study or narrative inquiry, because they are also important to understand or make sense of their experience in conducting their teaching activities, right? But then, some teachers during my webinar, so they inform me that policymakers tend to fund or give funding for those who actually conduct like quantitative or experimental designs of classroom action research. Probably it's because, the policymakers want to see like the proof or maybe the best practice to be conducted by the teachers. But yeah, probably you may give some comments about the possibility of conducting some qualitative approach for teacher professional development.
Right, I think Mr. Yogi, that's quite interesting idea. I do agree if the researchers, oh no, if the teachers are able to conduct any kinds of research, and it should be funded actually by the government of Indonesia, especially the education ministry. Like it is quite different between teachers and lecturers at university, although they are at the same level as educated in Indonesia, but lecturers in Indonesia are free to choose any kinds of research methodology to be conducted in his or her research. And when the proposal is well written and well organized, of course, and it meets the criteria given by the government, the research should be paid or funded by the government. But the teacher itself, there is a policy for them made by the government. That is when they would like to have their certification or when their academic job title would like to be improved, they have to do a classroom exam research. So that is the policy made. Actually, my comment is government should not limit it. The methodologies to be the research methodologies to be implemented by the teachers. Although classroom exam research is positively improved or give a possible solution to face or to take us the students' obstacle or problems during teaching and learning, but they must be given chances to implement in other kinds of research methodology for their research, I think. But maybe just because of, as I told you, comparing to the other researchers, as it is said in the theory that classroom action research directly solve the problem found by the teacher in his or her classroom. That is why the government just designed that classroom action research to be implemented by the teachers. That is my opinion and my suggestion. Thank you, Mr. Yogi.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Lamhot, for the response.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lamhot. And now we have here the last questions. Okay, so these questions are from Leroy Holman Siahan. So I would like to discuss the issues, or Leroy would like to ask some issues that arise in action research. So first question, Dr. Lamhot, is how to distinguish action research from bachelor's to master's and doctorate degree, because sometimes differences are too subtle. So what are the different emphasis at that level?
Okay. Another question? It's only
The second one is, what is the updated action research model? Because the existing model are more than 10 years old.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Ramon. Okay, first I would like to come into the first question. How to distinguish action research, classroom action research in doctoral dissertation, let's say doctoral dissertation or thesis magister, yeah, master thesis. So right, when we talk about classroom action research in undergraduate stages, so the objective or the problems and the objective which would like to be solved, in this bachelor undergraduate thesis is more at the surveys. It's only deciding to see whether students, let's say, students' learning result improved when it is taught using a methodology or using a teaching strategy. Let me give an example. So one of the examples of the classroom action research, which is conducted in bachelor level, improving students writing ability using self-regulated strategy development. So the only objective which is going to be attained or achieved in this bachelor degree research is to know whether a classroom action research is whether a self-regulated strategy development improve students' writing ability, and after that giving treatment and so on, and after that giving post-test, and then they analyze the data taken during conducting the research, and after analyzing and when the score is improved, yeah, then of course the result on the purpose of doing the classroom action research is attained or is achieved. While in what is it, in master degree level or doctoral degree level, then you can make the analysis, no, not the analysis, you can have one or two or more than two or three objectives to be solved, not only the learning result, of the students, let's say how their behaviors, yeah. So you can analyze also how the students behave to the research or to the teaching strategies or teaching media you implement during conducting the classroom action research. And also you can use more complete data, yeah, to give a very deep and strength analysis or support or evidence to the main topics you observe more, let's say the learning result from the students. So while when it is when we are talking at the level of baccalaureate degree, the teacher or the lecturers will allow students or won't force the students to do a more comprehensive classroom exam research. Yeah, the lecturers will allow students to just to do a simple classroom exam research, like performing a test, let's say a test, and also one of the qualitative data to strengthen the main data of the classroom exam research. I think that is the difference. And the newest or the most updated models for classroom exam research, I think there is no updated models. So but if you like to try to develop, but I'm trying now to develop the models of the classroom exam research. That's why I talk to you. Why do I disseminate this topic? Because I'm working on the book of classroom exam research. Yeah, I write about it and developed. I just don't want to show you how is the development of the classroom exam research model I made. Yeah, because somebody will steal it.
Because that if we want to make an article, of course that the references must be in 5 years. But the model of the exam research has been 10 years more. Okay. Could I have one more question, a simple question?
Mr. Raymond, still we have time?
Last question, please.
Last question. Simple questions. The issues come arise like this one. Exam research is not scientific because it's subjective. Why? Because if we have a model of strategies and then we teach in one class repeatedly, of course that the students will get improved. Okay, will get improved automatically. Okay, and then how do you think about that? There's some issue. That's exam research, not scientific, because that we teach it repeatedly.
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Yeah, that's correct, and I do agree to that assumption made by others. Yeah. Right. So when of course that's because our paradigm goes to classroom exam research conducted by the students of universities. Okay. So when we are talking classroom exam research on which is conducted by students by students of universities for his or her undergraduate thesis research, of course the idea you say just now is applicable. Why? Because the students of the university will choose a topics to be taught to the students using a method or using a teaching strategies. Of course, in conducting the classroom exam research by the students, will focus on only one topics during treatment. So when he is performing the action of the classroom exam research, he teaches the students these topics repeatedly. Yes, and I guess of course the student's ability and understanding about the topics he or she presented in his research, there must be a good improvement. But it is impossible to be conducted when we conduct that way in as a teacher. Of course, we don't have enough time to teach in other topics to the student because we focus on that topics. That is why, as I told you, there must be adaptation, a little bit difference when a teacher conduct a classroom exam research and students conduct a classroom exam research. So the teacher won't teach the teacher in the class will teach the topics of the teaching as what is written in the curriculum. So of course it won't be taught repeatedly. So that is the only difference when a teacher conducted a classroom action research and a students conducting a classroom action research. Maybe the people who ask you is the students, right? Or the teacher who value students' work. That's it.
That's right. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leroy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lahut. Glad to see you again.
Okay, thank you, brother.
Thank you very much,
Salamat.
Leroy, and thank you very much, Dr. Lamhot Naibaho, for now we have a better understanding of what classroom action research is, and maybe we have in mind how classroom action research is different from participatory action research. So before we end your talk, Dr. Lamhot, any parting words to our 67 participants about your study on classroom action research, and maybe in the future we might able to see the new model of CAR. So
Okay. Thank you, brother Ramon. Right, so everybody, just nice to be with you today. As I told you, this is parts of my parts of process, parts of process before the book that I'm working on published. So I would like to disseminate this first, so everybody know it or familiar with classroom action research. So actually, when conducting a classroom action research, we need to take care of some notes that I put in my slides. So, because a lot of mistakes were done or occurred during implementing a classroom action research. So just need to everybody to take a look at it again, and then if you have questions about it, you can discuss it with me again, because you can check out my Google Scholar. I have completed address and everything there. You can find me at UKI as well. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Raymond. That's all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lamhot Naibaho. So that's a parting words to our 68 participants. Thank you very much. So that ends the last and the sixth plenary session of the first AEJ UKI SLA Research International Conference, and this is a virtual conference. Okay, and may we ask everyone to open their cameras for a photo opportunity with our plenary speaker, Dr. Lamhot. Okay, so may I request everyone to open your cameras for our photo opportunity. Okay, may I request the committee member or the moderator to take a snapshot of the first slide. Please smile, everyone. Thank you. The next slide, please. Please smile, everyone. And the next slide, please smile, everyone. And the last slide, please smile, everyone. Thank you very much. And that is our photo opportunity with our plenary speaker, Dr. Lamhot Naibaho from the Universitas Kristen Indonesia. Earlier, we were not able to have a photo opportunity with our fifth plenary speaker, Dr. Edward Quinto. I tried contacting him, but he did not send any response. So I would assume that he is busy at the moment, because earlier he asked me if he can go out for lunch, because after his presentation, he's really hungry. Okay, so maybe that will not affect the success of our 3-day conference. So At this point, I'll be announcing something before we formally close our 3-day conference. So first, I would say thank you very much to Team UKI Indonesia and Team TESOL Asia Philippines for a successful 3-day international virtual conference. I know the feeling of many sleepless nights because of the organizing conferences like this is really taxing. Yes, we cannot just organize a virtual conference with the snap of our fingers. I would say it's really difficult. So thank you to all the committee members from Indonesia and all the committee members from the Philippines. Let's give them a big round of applause. Okay. So based from text messages and Facebook messages from some attendees, I would say that this is a successful international conference. But we'll have the formal assessment of this conference soon when everyone gets to receive an email from Team Indonesia on the feedback form, because everyone should answer the feedback form. Your answers will greatly help any future conferences that AEJ or UKI will have in the future. Thank you very much. And also, I would like to thank everyone who presented and who attended this conference. Without you, academics, professors, teachers, students, without you, this conference will not be successful. And without you, there will be no conference. And of course, without us, there will be no English SLA in the Asian contexts and culture in post COVID-19 theme for this first AEJ UKI SLA Research International Conference. Okay, an announcement after this first AEJ and UKI conference, we will collaborate again with a university in the Philippines for the first International Student Research Congress. So this next conference will showcase research projects from undergraduate, magister or masterate students and PhD or doctorate students, as some countries are now requiring their students to present and publish their work before they can graduate in their degree programs. So this conference will be held sometime July or August this year, and it will be hosted by a university in the Philippines. More information will be sent to your emails once we agreed on the terms and conditions of the conference. And I hope that this is good news, not just to you teachers or professors, but also to your students, because at some point we thought that students are not really being given a chance to present in international conferences because of the costs of presentation. But you don't need to worry, because this International Student Research Congress will actually be student friendly by means of its costs. So I'm saying that it's not just students who can present their papers, but also teachers, for as long as you will be with your students. And students cannot present their papers without their advisors. So I hope that with your support in this first AEJ UKI SLA Research International Virtual Conference, you will support other ventures and other conferences of the Asian EFL Journal and TESOL Asia. And I, Ramon Medriano Jr., as the new as a person in charge of the academics and the publication side of TESOL Asia, would like to tell everyone that we are making sure that all conference papers will be published at at all provided schedule. We are now cleaning our backlogs, and I'll make sure, as the academic and publication manager of TESOL Asia, that everyone will be happy by the end of 2021. Thank you very much for your support. And to formally close our conference, may we ask Team Indonesia for the closing prayer.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Raymond Mediano Jr., Doctor. Shalom. Peace be with you to the audience. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Namo Buddhaya, Om Swastiastu, Salam Kebajikan. We thank God for accompanying this event. First, AEJ Universitas Kristen Indonesia, SLA webinar in the Asian context and culture post-COVID-19 for 3 days with many findings from researchers. And it's time we will end with a prayer. And I lead it in a Christian prayer. Dear audience, let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, the Father whom we worship in Jesus Christ, the owner of all knowledge, who has given us the strength to hold this grand meeting so that it is well organized and produces many new breakthroughs in the development of science that will be implemented for our work, our study, our services, so that the benefit can be felt for the wider community. What this webinar has done without involving God will all be in vain. For that we pray to you, God, to make perfect everything that has been presented, the finding of researchers from various universities, local and abroad university in this webinar, as well as the main speaker and committee members who are still working until the purpose of this event is fully realized. May grace, strength, and wisdom, as well as health, always be a part of our life, and in particular, God bless the Christian University of Indonesia, which will always be a light and blessing for the Indonesian people who serve, not to be served, with faith and knowledge. Let God forgive our mistakes, weaknesses, and sins, for our words, thought, and deed that we done on purpose of accidentally, so that in the future will be done integrity and holy. Thanks you, Lord. We praise your name, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And in the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. So now we have here Dr. Edward J. Quinto. So he's now logged in. So now we may take a photo opportunity with our fifth plenary speaker. Dr. Quinto, if we may ask you to open your camera, please. Okay, so can we have this photo opportunity with our fifth plenary speaker, Dr. Edward J. Quinto? May I ask the committee member to take a snapshot of the first slide? Smile, everyone. And the next slide, please. Smile, everyone. And our third slide. Smile, everyone. And the last slide. Smile, everyone.
Fill me out with your smile. Let the sunshine brings the light. Fill me out with a flame. I will let you in this heat. Take me out when I'm down. 'Cause with you I'm safe and sound. 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 Take that beat back. Take me out when I'm down. 'Cause with you I'm safe and sound.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so sorry because we just had a power interruption.
That's
Yes,
okay,
but I
Mr.
would like,
Ramon.
yeah, I would like to say thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you do have a wonderful
Everybody,
day, and I
see
hope
you.
to see
Bye-bye.
you again in the next conference. And I hope
Yeah,
we
God
have
bless you
another
all.
collaboration in the
Bye-bye.
future. Bye bye.